Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Zeigler. I am the CEO of the Human Score, and today I'm honored to be joined by Dermot Quigley of Hotel Trader. Hotel Trader is the 2026 winner of the Global Human Centered Award, and this award recognizes organizations that put people at the heart of how work is designed, decisions are made, and value is created. And the most meaningful part is that nominations come from those who have experienced that impact firsthand. And then the organizations that participate once nominated are based on their human score and what their employees rate them across 5 dimensions, which include work design, decision making, culture, structure, as well as fairness. But today isn't about metrics or checklists. It's about hearing the real story behind the Hotel Trader, the beginnings, the values, and the choices that have shaped them into a truly human-centered workplace. So thank you, Dermot, for being here with me. Let's get started. And I
My
want to
pleasure.
start with, the origin story, because many of the people that are going to tune into this may not have heard the story of Hotel Trader. So tell us, how did it all begin?
Yeah, so we'll go back to the origin story. So I was born and raised in Ireland.
Hmm.
I was raised in my father was an alcoholic,
Hmm.
abusive household in certain aspects. And as I kind of grew up within that environment, it creates a kind of survivalist aspect. And at 16, I wanted something different. And so I had graduated high school at 16, maybe a little early on track. And I played for the Irish national basketball team under 18s, and I had a desire to discover what else was out there. So I had the opportunity to come to the States on a basketball scholarship, but we didn't have the means to do it. My mother wrote into a local newspaper, and a couple with a philanthropic organization responded. So we went into the Royal Automobile Club in Dublin, and met with them. And it was Vincent and Vicky Pawleski Koziel, a count and a countess. And
Mm.
he wrote a check for 1,500 Irish pounds, which helped pay for the flight. And then I came to the States with $600. Now, it's not that I arrived on the shores with $600. I had another family, the Hettingers, Marcia, Walt, Zach, and Ali, who took me in for the year, and
Mm.
loved and cared for me during that year. And while I was in high school in the States during that year, there was a girl in my class, Rachel, and her mother, Linda, who eventually supported my ability to go to school in the US. So I was heading back to Ireland at the end of graduation, and Linda offered to help pay for the 50% scholarship that was missing for college. I went back to Ireland. People were sitting in the same place in the same pub, and I kind of realized that there was a bigger opportunity here.
Mm.
So Linda paid for the part of college that wasn't covered. She paid for grad school, and she exposed me to many incredible uh, opportunities within the world. So I share that because three strangers in as many years paved the path for me to be here. Um,
Mm.
and so when we look at the origin story of Hotel Trader, it is very much um, not just influenced, it's very much created through that lens.
Mm.
So I took advantage of the opportunities. I went to college, I graduated with honors. I went to grad school. I was the only one in my class in Cornell to graduate with honors and distinction. That was my way of kind of paying forward, or at least honoring the opportunity that was provided to me. I
Mm.
met my wife, Julie, in college, and we then did long distance while we were both in grad school, and then moved together to New York in the early 2000s. So I went to graduate school at Cornell, studied revenue management with Sherry Kimes, and kind of came out of there with a very analytical focus on our industry. I then focused primarily on pricing, distribution, those rails, began to get a sense and discover through my experience as to what didn't work.
Mm,
And then I worked for a company called Tarico Holidays, which was in the B2B distribution space. And it was there that I really learned and honed my craft and got all of the knowledge. Incredible company. And that was where I really, did my apprenticeship, so to speak. I was given a lot of autonomy, a lot of exposure, got access to the elements within the industry that today we seek to solve. So
mm,
the origin of the business itself is to solve friction and challenges within the distribution ecosystem. And then the culture
mm,
of the organization is very much founded in my experience through Vincent, Vicky, Marsha, Walt, and Linda in the journey of creating my ability to be here.
I love that. And what's interesting about your story, especially with the adults that invested in your life as a young, high school, college student, is that they saw the potential and they saw the need that you had and they sought to fill it. And I think that those two elements are kind of the groundwork for human-centered leadership. And so by doing that to you or operating in that way with you, you have in turn done the same thing in your area of passion with the hotel industry, looked at what is the potential here, what are the needs that are still unsolved, and how can we go about it. So I just love that you not only experienced human-centered leadership in the people that invested in you as a youth, but you also turned around and began operating in that way based on their model. Um, you know, the next question kind of digs into that. Beyond these three individuals, Mark and Linda, and I forget the last name, but beyond those three, what other things in your life has shaped your leadership philosophy and how you operate as a leader at Hotel Trader?
Yeah, so I think in my journey during that period, I was driven by what I would say were fairly human constructs. I grew up without money, and so my primary objective was money.
Hmm.
There was nothing going to stand between me and success through that lens in that
Hmm.
parameter. And then I had financial success with Tarico, and that creates, I guess, a security to a certain extent.
Hmm.
And the question is, well, what's after that, right? If that's the primary goal,
Yeah.
what comes after that? And I think that was that was when those questions began to raise, because a lot of my success was built on, I would say, a certain level of aggression, perhaps, and then certainly the idea of dominate and don't be dominated and don't show weakness, and a lot of the foundational characteristics of what my childhood kind of required in
Yeah.
order to survive.
Yeah.
Um, and those are not great traits for leadership, and I would say not great traits for parenting and or relationships. And so when in 2018, when I took the year off between ending at Tarico and moving into my role at Hotel Trader, a company that I was a co-founder in previously, but I was coming on then to run it.
Hmm.
I was looking to discover how not to be that way. And I
Yeah.
had done therapy going backwards, and I knew all the reasons why I was operating the way I was operating, but how do I not is really
Yeah.
the question. And it was I met there was a gentleman that his kids were in my kids' class, Mark, and he became a friend. And then he introduced me to the work that he did, some leadership and coaching work that he did, and the creator of that work is a gentleman by the name of Brandon Craig, and his company is Ontocore. And
Mm.
and it comes from the difference between epistemological or epistemology, which is the knowing of, and
Mm-hmm.
ontology, which is the as lived experience of. So it was kind of like the idea that, oh, well, I know all of the things I ought do or not do, um,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I'm not doing them, or I am doing them. How to resolve that, and so I began that work, and that has led very much into the culture of Hotel Trader, and I'm still, actively in that work and will be for the rest of my life. And so there are a couple of principles at play there, and one that I really subscribe to, which is that if I if I subscribe to the notion that the life that I have today is one of my own creation, meaning that I'm responsible uh,
Mm-hmm.
for the life that I have, for good or for bad. Um, then the good news is that I can create it differently. Um,
Yeah.
but if I am of the opinion that the the life that I have today has happened to me, that whether it be the circumstances of my environment or my childhood, then it would be quite difficult to see a path for it to be different. Uh,
Yeah.
and so the definition of leadership in Brandon's language is to create a future that otherwise would not exist while fulfilling on or attempting to fulfill on the best interests of all stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. I
So
love
as
that.
we look at the culture of the organization, as we look at the individuals, there's an opportunity for leadership to show up everywhere, always, at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that combined with, I would say, the motivation and the drive from the people who showed up in my life to create a pathway or opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise existed, um,
Yeah.
is a significant influence in the culture of Hotel Trader.
And I love your story because that difference between knowing what it means to be a leader and actually living as a leader is something we see played out in the news every day, quite frankly, right? We have numerous leaders from political to business that are leaders by their title, but by their actions, maybe not necessarily. So,
Well, we have people in
I,
positions of power, let's say that.
yes,
Whether
yes.
they be leaders or not is another question.
Yes. So I love that. Is there a single catalyst that helped you switch from knowing what to do as a leader and actually living it?
Yeah, my kids. Yeah, I
Mm,
think, so my wife had introduced us when Sophia was born, and we were young parents. Julie had discovered I guess a philosophy is probably how I would describe it best, of conscious discipline, which
mm,
is essentially at its heart is the idea that the kids are fine. Like, children are absolutely fine. You're
hmm.
the reason that things are not fine. Like,
Yeah.
you're bringing so much of your own construct, meaning those foundational building blocks of what is,
Hmm.
this is good, this is bad, this is right,
Yeah.
this is wrong, whether it comes
Yeah.
from your religious foundation, the original programming from your childhood, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, most of what you believe and most of
Hmm.
your construct, it was given to you
Right.
by somebody else, and the somebody
Mhm.
else always being a flawed human. Now,
Yeah.
they may be your parents, they may be your caregivers, they may be relatives, they may be teachers, they may be other parties, but at the end of the day, they're humans like you and I.
Right.
And part of what wasn't working for me was the idea that I would look through that lens and I would, see or experience my kids in a way that oh, I believe they ought to either do or be something, whether it be around the concept of discipline or structure or anything else,
Yeah.
and how limiting that is as a thought
Yeah.
process, like how limiting that is in the ability to truly get access to their brilliance, their greatness, their authenticity, the everything around it, and how
Yeah.
much I'm creating these boxes or limitations around it based on what I think is, oh, no, 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 you should do this, or you should do that, or it ought to be this way, or it ought to be that way. I
Yeah.
didn't really know how to do it differently. And so that was a real catalyst is I'm committed to not doing it differently. And so I didn't repeat the same kind of cycle of abuse that,
Sure.
but that's not enough. It's a pretty low bar. And it's
Yeah.
not to say that, like, I love my mother, I love my dad, he's no longer with us. Um, and to not repeat those mistakes is like a baseline.
Right. Right.
It's not
Yeah.
optimal. It's not looking to discover what could be. So
Right.
that was the biggest catalyst, and so it made it pretty easy then to take on the information in a way that was objective and that always had that intention behind it. So it was kind of like, well, if this helps me accomplish that, then yeah, of course I'll do it. Like there's nothing I wouldn't do.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and even in that, the idea of how to define commitment. So the language that we use for commitment is to do what's necessary.
Mm.
There's no time limit.
Yeah.
There's no if then. It's just to do what's necessary. And so yeah, I would say I, I've always been. It's always been easy for me or natural. I don't know if it's been easy. It's always been natural for me to this constant evolution. Like, okay, I've done
Hmm.
this now. What's next? What's next? What's next? It can be
Yeah.
exhausting. It can certainly be exhausting for the people around me.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and in this case, it was really useful to discover how do I show up if I want my kids to feel loved, judgment free. How do I be that? Like, what's the
Yeah.
execution of that? And
Yeah.
by extension, wouldn't it wouldn't it be useful to get access to the brilliance of people who are building the business with me, um, to get access in the same way? Like, why would I want them to be constrained? Why would I want them to feel judged? Why would I? Because I don't enjoy it. And
Yeah.
so theoretically, and now in practice in the building of the business, theoretically, if I can get access to the individual level of brilliance at
Hmm.
scale across the organization, um, through intentional language, intentional leadership, then we ought to, the results will manifest themselves. Like
Yeah.
it would be very difficult for that not to result in success, depending on
Yeah.
how you define success.
And I love your point because it's often what you did initially with pursuing your career. You know, grew up in poverty, so I was running to the opposite success. But I love how the conscious leadership part that your wife introduced and maybe your coach as well made you pause because sometimes it's not one's good, one's bad. Sometimes it's making a conscious choice in the
Yeah.
moment what's best, right?
Yeah, and I think even the idea of good bad disappears. It's just, is it useful or not useful toward your intended outcome? So
Yeah.
if you're an employee, for example, or part of my leadership team, and I'm looking to get performance from you, and now we're in a conversation, uh, it's not good, bad, right, wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, is it
Yeah.
useful or not useful toward the outcome that we desire? So who I'm being with you, is that useful or not useful to drive performance over where you are? And then what you're doing relative to performance, is it useful or not useful toward the objectives and outcomes that the company desires? Like
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
be, when it's that objective and we remove all of the friction around the judgment and the perception and the emotion and all of these things around it, the conversations become so much easier
Mm.
because they can share
I
with me where what I'm doing or how I'm operating is not useful in the context of where we want to get to in the conversation. And I can hear that and go, oh, okay. So, like, what would be useful? It's not about
yeah.
right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's simply about what do we want the outcome to be? And are we getting
Right.
closer or further away from it right now?
Yeah. I love that. Um, and that ties in next, quite well with the next question I have for you. When people describe your organization as human centered, what does that mean to you? I think you've already described it in some ways, but what does that mean to you in a concrete, lived way?
Yeah, so we we live in an environment in which um, we have many things outside of this thing called work that are important. And for some
Hmm.
people, it could be family, it could be a hobby, it could be a career, you could be an athlete, you could be like a musician, any of these things. And in my experience in businesses, there's both a separation of church and state, so to speak,
Hmm.
and uh, a distinction around the hierarchy. Um,
Yeah,
if you want to be successful, that it's going to require all of these sacrifices, and so there's a woman in our company, and so we created some videos a couple of years back because when we saw, and some of them are now coming out and being used in LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen any of them. You might have seen a travel one, but if you haven't, then they'll be on the website and everything else. But the purpose of them
yeah,
was that when we go to describe the business, and Simon Sinek has the golden circle, right, which are the concentric
right. Yeah,
circles of what, how, why, and so
right.
start with why is his component, right? So it ties
Hmm.
into this whole piece of the human centric element. Is it possible to create a successful business while also fulfilling people um, at the level of the being, like at a,
Hmm.
what do you call it, soul or your being or humanity or whatever language you want to use? Like, is it
Right.
possible for both of those to coexist in a way that they can both flourish? And
Mm,
the quote from this young woman, Louisa, in the business is, I want to be the best mom I can be, and I also want to be the best employee that I can be. Why can't I be both?
right. Yeah.
And we believe you can.
Hmm.
And it requires real intention in each of the domains. And we also believe, or I believe, that what serves you in one can also serve you in the other. That that they're not this, here's my work persona and here's my home persona. No,
Yeah.
I want you to be successful. I want my kids to be successful, my daughter, my son. I want my wife to be successful, I want my friends to be successful, however they define success. And
Yeah.
I want them to feel fulfilled, and I want them to feel loved, and not just by me, but to have the experience of being valued. And
Right.
so as we began to explore that, and I began to explore that with my kids, we're into the domain of neurodiversity, we're into the domain of gender and race and religion and all of these other elements that could theoretically be divisive and or separate,
Hmm.
and if viewed through the lens of authentic curiosity and connection, there are wonderful, beautiful learning opportunities around all of those things. So we
Hmm.
travel a lot. We're connected with a community here in Orlando who are doing monumentally life-changing work. It's a group called Crosstown, which
Hmm.
is over in Paramore here in Orlando, and it is across Division Avenue. And you can have a sense of what in the South Division Avenue is dividing, and
Mm,
it still exists today. And the work that they do in the domain of you, you are enough in
hmm.
terms of you have incredible skills, incredible values, and where you were born and the DNA of how you were born has very little to do with what would be possible for you, but has so much to do with what's possible for you because of the constraints around you.
Yeah.
So, and I
Yeah.
can relate to that as I
Hmm.
shared with you my story in a way that there are many people that grew up and lived where I lived that never had the chance to
Yeah.
to experience what I've experienced. And given the chance, I can imagine that many of them would have flourished in similar ways.
Yeah. I love your importance that you place on authenticity and fulfillment and success by their own measure. I have often said that all labels disappear when we start to look at people like humans who have traumas and triggers and fears and
For sure.
doubts, but they also have dreams and potential. And if we see that all of us are in that boat, trying to move forward with that construct of being human, then it doesn't matter the race or where you're from or what the job is. There's a way for us to connect beyond that. So, when you talk about the importance of the human and their authenticity and their fulfillment and what they bring through lived experience to your organization, how does that translate into the values and maybe some of the practices that um, have outlined it as the leader of the Hotel Trader?
Yeah. So I we don't do annual reviews. We don't do, I don't subscribe to the idea of performance improvement plans and which are essentially a legal construct, right? Like they came out
Yeah,
of the design of and in many cases with good reason, right? Like some people were whether we look at the origin of unions or we look at any of these other things, they came from a place of protection,
sure.
and at times then evolve into kind of bureaucracy in a way that limit
Uh,
certain things. So
Sure.
every engagement with every employee, whether it be with a peer or with their leader, is an opportunity to discover how you're performing. And
Mm,
it's not just an opportunity, it is the purpose of the conversation. So,
yeah,
so if I look at my meetings with my leaders and some of their leaders and their team and their meeting with their team, and we meet a couple of times a week, well, isn't the purpose of the meeting to talk about performance? Well, what
yeah.
else? What else are we talking about? Like
Yeah.
other than the how you doing and like if we need time together and everything else. But I don't see those as separate. Like the idea
Yeah.
of performance to me is across the spectrum. Like because if you're not performing in your home, whatever your
Hmm.
role may be, you might be a mother, a father, a child, a sibling, a caretaker. If you're not performing there, then likely you're constrained in some capacity, right? It's on your mind.
Yeah.
You've got a
Hmm.
sick child, or you're not in a healthy relationship with your spouse or your partner. To think that that's not going to affect your performance over here is insane.
Yeah.
It we'd have the same brain. Like there are some people who can compartmentalize, but it's really challenging. If you're
Yeah.
struggling over here, that's going to show up over here.
Yeah.
So this idea of performance being however you want to define it. So my relationship with a lot of people in the organization is around sometimes how they're performing outside of business because it has a tremendous impact on how they perform within the business.
Yeah.
And and part of
What's
the
the
idea,
famous quote? The way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
yes, or wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. Yeah.
Like it's yeah, like and so when I look at the idea of, we've got a fully remote, so we have no offices, we've got a fully remote global footprint, and that's challenging. There's no question. In terms,
Yeah.
I personally believe that when we're together in person, I'm more performant. I enjoy the in person, that connection, that communication, the creativity, all of those things. And so we ensure that
Hmm.
we create time and space for that,
Yeah.
and look to be consistent in that. But as it relates to the interconnected nature of the business, so it's unlimited vacation, which theoretically sounds either ideal or theoretically sounds like, oh well, that's also a manifestation of the fact that you don't have to accrue vacation days and it doesn't work in the benefit of the people. Uh,
Mhm.
I lead by example. I take decent vacation. I
Yeah.
because I want to be with my family. I
Yeah.
also want to disconnect and I
Hmm.
want to come back refreshed. And every
Yeah.
time that I do that, I can come back with a slightly more objective view because I've been away from it for a bit,
Right.
away for a
Yeah.
week, 2 weeks. I can go back and I can see and experience the business differently. And oh, okay.
Yeah.
So within that, we don't have those traditional measures or metrics around the concept of like an annual review. Let's talk about last January. We can barely remember last week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so every conversation is a conversation around performance. Every employee in the organization, I can't guarantee every employee, but I can certainly know that the ones that my leadership team know every day how they're performing. And they
Yeah.
know what needs improvement, and they know what they excel at, and they know what the business is lacking, and they know where the gaps are, and they know what we need to improve individually, collectively, across the board. And so if there's a process of declining performance, or
Hmm.
if there's an increasing gap between a growing and evolving business and what it needs versus what the individual can contribute,
Hmm.
then it doesn't mean that they have no value. And it doesn't mean that they're not committed to the business. And it doesn't mean that they're underperforming. What it means is that the need of the business and their capacity to fulfill on the need of the business, the gap is growing.
Yeah.
And we might need to insert a resource into that gap. And they still have and can continue to contribute meaningful value to the organization.
So tell me a little bit more about the gap and how you are able to address that, especially in the case where the employee continues to work for you.
Yeah. So in a domain of objective assessment and in a domain of leadership, leaders creating leaders toward a future that otherwise wouldn't exist, the second part is
Hmm.
most important, while fulfilling on or attempting to fulfill on the best interest of all stakeholders.
Right.
So let's say we're in an organization together. We built it. It's a small organization. And what domain do you want to own? What's your expertise?
Yeah. Designing.
Designing. Great. So we're in design and we've got an initial product. It's a small product. It's a series of products. Could we agree that design for a startup that has 10 clients would likely require a different skill set than design for $1 billion organization?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have this opportunity within the organization. If you're in early, you have
Hmm.
the opportunity to evolve from a designer of $100,000 company to be a designer of $1 billion organization.
Sure.
And
Big
your
difference.
opportunity is to a certain extent framed within the pace of growth of that organization.
Right.
And if that organization managed to get from 100 grand to $1 billion in 3 years, chances are, chances, you're not going to scale that fast. Your design, knowledge, expertise, learning, fulfillment, team building, leadership is not likely to leapfrog from that of a $100,000 organization to $1 billion organization in 3 years. It's
Yeah.
possible, but it's not likely.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Would
even if it were possible, there is also the fact that perhaps I don't want to be the
100%,
designer for the $100 billion.
100%.
I
Yeah,
may just like managing my little product.
100%. And so knowing that
Yeah.
and constantly communicating through that lens, hey, we can see where the business is going. Isn't this exciting? Yeah. How are you doing? Where are you at? How is performance? Hey, you seem to be you seem to be struggling a little with the pace. Are you struggling with the pace? Yeah, I'm struggling with the pace. Okay. So what do we think we need? Do we need technology? Do we need people? Do we need resources? Oh, I think we need a team. Okay, well, the budget won't really allow for the team. We need to do less with more at the minute. What does that look like? How does that? Yeah, I'm doing this. Hey, we've we've had this conversation a few times. Do you see it? Like the most important aspect is your relationship to this whole thing, not mine.
Yeah.
And if we can create, which we can and we do, create your experience to be objective,
Hmm.
then oftentimes you'd be the one to say, hey, I
I'm
think we
out.
need,
I need to,
no, I think we
or
need
no.
someone above me. Like I need a
Yeah.
mentor. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I need someone who knows how to do this. Where am I learning this? I'm on YouTube. I'm learning as fast as I can, but I can't keep pace with this. Like we need a knowledge expert in here, and I'd love to learn from that person. And what I bring to the table is all of my knowledge of the business. There's no one that you can bring in that can replicate that. What a gift
Yeah.
it would be if you had a resource internally that says, not only do I objectively see that we as an organization would benefit from a leader in this role, I have a real desire to learn from somebody who can
Right.
bring that level of knowledge and expertise because I'm committed to the business. I
Hmm.
see that this is not a reflection on me or my ability. It's simply a career trajectory or path. And can
Yeah.
I be a part of finding the best person for that role? Because they're going to be my mentor, and I really want to live into this thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
what a beautiful outcome that would
What
be.
a delightful conversation. You
I
know,
think so. Yeah.
yeah,
And people call
and
them like difficult conversations. I'm like, I really don't experience them
was
that
so,
way because I've been with these people
yeah.
in a way that we can be objective about it.
And, I think the difficult part that we see play over and over again in the market is they don't have these conversations
Right.
until the annual review.
100%.
And then it's like, what? You're not, we've met every week for a year or every month for a year. And this is the first time you tell me I'm not cutting it. Yeah. But
Because
I think the way you put it, it's not put through the lens they're not cutting it, but that, you know, their experience and what is required is different. That's very objective. That's observing things from the outside in versus you're not good enough. You're not doing everything right.
yeah, and you raised earlier, which was really accurate and insightful, is the idea of what are their objectives? Maybe
Yeah.
they want to be more with their family. Maybe they don't want, like there could be 101 things driving their motivation, and to know that is really useful. So
Yeah.
the language that we use is, so if you go back to commitment, right, to do what is necessary,
Mm-hmm.
my team and my employees know I am committed to two things.
Mm.
I am committed to them and I'm committed to the organization.
Right.
So to do what is necessary. So when the conversations are occurring, they likely have an experience, and I think some of this showed up in the survey. They
Mm-hmm.
have an experience of me being committed to them. Like
Yeah.
I'm in this conversation because I want what's best for you as best as we can execute on that in the light of I'm also committed to this thing called the business.
Right.
And so we're holding both of those in tandem.
Yeah.
And the conversations we're in are not about villainizing or vilifying or any gotchas. Like
Yeah.
if I have an experience of what performance is for you, and then I experience you as being not performant, my first question is, hey, what's happened? Like, are you okay? It's
Yeah.
not, it's not about you're not performing. I know you're not performing, and I know what performance looks like. So there's a reason. So, and the reason could be you feel disconnected from the business or the organization. Okay, then I that's ownership over where I am at some level, not the entirety of it, but there's a piece that's at play for me. Okay, why are you feeling disconnected? How is this happening? Where's the breakdown here? Or you're struggling over here, or there's some other elements. Okay, you're struggling over here. Let's just use that example. Great. You're a new parent and you're drowning, or there's whatever else happening, or a death in the family, or you're a caretaker, or whatever it might be. Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So objectively, we can agree you're not performing at 100%. No, I'm not. Wonderful. What percent could we create together that would free you from whatever theoretical thing you've created in your head that says, I have to show up here every day? Like, would I rather get you unconstrained and performant 50% of the time, or have you showing up constrained 100% of the time? Logically,
Yeah.
I want you unconstrained 50%. And so if we've
Yeah.
created a structure for 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time frame is, where you say, I can commit 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., 3 days a week because whatever, we've got a caretaker and everything else. And I operate best in the morning. I'm terrible in the evening, but I can give you those hours and I can show up and perform. Great. What does performance look like? Well, it looks like this, and this. Great. So we agree that if it's this, that's performant and that's what the business needs and that's what we're committing to. And then you're not showing up these other days or these other times. And if you can, you will, but we're not guaranteed that it will be there. Great.
Yeah.
Create an agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I can hold you accountable to that framework and not this larger, hey, look, you're not doing what you're supposed to do framework. Like I don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm
And you know what
committed. Because what's the alternative then? That either I
yeah.
lose you and I've had you and I know what performance from you looks like and I don't want to lose that. Like I just don't really see
Yeah.
any other rational outcome other than working with what is. Like we can argue about what
Yeah.
it ought to be, but
Yeah.
when we work with what is, my experience is that we get really meaningful outcomes in so many ways.
Yeah. And what I loved about what you're saying here is the constraints. You talk about the constraints of the company, but also the constraints of the lived experience of the employee. And as a design thinker, constraints are the creative, juice. And so when I hear, employers say, well, my employees aren't creative, I'm like, well, there's something missing here because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
every day, there's
Just no
many of them.
creativity exists over where they are.
It's like this conversation alone creates creativity, right? Because now you have to see, okay, here's my constraints as an employee, here's
For
my
sure.
constraints as a employer. How do we make this work? And I think those conversations are missing in so many organizations. And as a result of them not being there, creativity is also missing or deemed to not be there.
Yeah, I look at the life cycle of any given employee over time and
Yeah.
like just consider the idea of an interview process.
Yeah.
An interview process, landing and again, look, I'm open to the perspective that what I'm building is somewhat unique. It sits in the creative domain. It's in building something that doesn't exist. I imagine hiring for perhaps F&B roles or factory workers or office or everything else. Like there's a very different domain. I can't speak to how I would implement it in that domain, but I am of the opinion that it can be that
Oh,
it can exist
absolutely.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm not dismissive of the idea that like on one hand, people might say, "Oh, well, look, you have the luxury of, finding the right fit and all of those things." And I was like, but it's been created. It didn't just show up. I
Yeah.
don't have a luxury. Like we created a
Yeah.
culture that by design is doing this over time because when we look at the life cycle, you've got the idea of like any relationship, you have the investigation process, right? So the interview or the dating or the
First date. Yeah.
whatever it might be, right?
Hmm.
And then you have the commitment. And if commitment to you is I'll try it versus to do what is necessary, then we have a different definition of commitment. So let's
Right.
start
Yeah.
there. And I would discover that during the discovery process. Like so.
Yeah.
So now we get to a place that like commitment means somewhat the same, but maybe not the exact same. But I get a sense of what you mean by commitment. And now we're committed. Then you've likely built some trust during that process, but the as lived experience of trust building and commitment and experiencing commitment, because it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to feel it. And, and
Right.
and the
Yeah.
conversation that
And to
we've
live
been
it.
in around that performance and what percentage of performance could I get from you, like I don't see any other experience you could have than one of someone who's committed to you because
Mm.
we're working to discover how can we meet you where you are at the moment because we know this is a temporary situation in what we
Yeah.
believe will be a long-term relationship of meaning and performance and outcomes. And, then there's financial upside because we're a startup. And I've been on the receiving side of life-changing financial upside.
Yeah.
And if I can, our call center staff in India, so turnover in call centers are notoriously 50 to 100% a year in 6 years, and Missy is our head of operations, and she's got Tabriz handling customer support, phenomenal women in the company. And again, like the idea of, I won't go on a tangent. We'll talk about diversity in a second, but We've 13% lifetime turnover in the call center over 6 years.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
and
I love
everyone,
that.
yeah, everyone in our customer support team are so committed to the organization and the people. And it's impossible for me to do what I do if they're not doing what they do. And they're
Right.
all owners in the business. They all have ownership interest in our business, everyone in the entire company.
Mm,
And so investors would typically say, well, you should keep that vehicle for those that understand it and the leadership. And to me, that's just a perpetual system in which how would they know what it means unless I expose them to it? And so if I can
yeah.
create, meaningful, possibly life-changing events for them at some stage in the future, and by me, I mean I'm creating the opportunity by giving them the options. They're creating the outcome collectively. We're creating
Oh,
the
yeah.
outcome. Then why, like, what else is there? The investors are going to make their money. I'm going to make my money. The leaders are going to make their money. Like every, but that, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fulfilling. Like that's fulfilling beyond, at least for me, it's fulfilling
Yeah.
beyond anything that the
Yeah.
company in and of
Because
itself
you're
being
giving,
successful would do.
yeah, well, you're giving them more than a job. You're giving them perhaps the catalyst to their dreams outside of work,
Sure.
right?
Or their families, their extended
Yeah.
families. Maybe their kids
Oh,
can do
yeah.
something different. Maybe a family member can do something different. Maybe it's
Yeah.
medical care for like who knows? I like
Yeah.
it's unknown, and all I know is that my journey involved people creating those opportunities for me to lean into. And
Yeah.
boy, has it changed the trajectory of many lives.
Yeah.
For myself, my kids, employees, extension.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, I could go on with you for hours, Dermot, because it's so not the norm of what we see and hear from leaders who say, human centricity, yeah, that's nice, that sounds good, but it doesn't, there's no evidence that it shows up in the numbers, um, even though there's plenty of research that does. You know, what for those that maybe are shaded in their opinion of running a company that's human centered, what would you say to those individuals that want to see evidence, want to see, you know, they have this list of pain points and they don't see how human centricity fits into solving those pain points?
Yeah. So first of all, what I would say is uh, I'm honored and moved by being a part of this and the work that you're doing, and I'm just appreciative that I was connected to it in such a way that we had this opportunity, and
Yeah,
it's fantastic. And anything that you need to grow, support, or enable any facet of what you're doing, I'm here and available, and will contribute in any way that I can. So thank you
thank you. Yeah.
for that. I look to me, it's really simple. It's not complicated at all, and it goes back to this premise of kind of intention and language around intention and everything else. Are you happy with the outcome? If you're happy with the outcome, continue to do what you're doing. There's no problem to fix.
Mm.
If you're not happy with the outcome, and it would appear that you're not, and
Yeah.
this is not your first attempt to resolve it,
Hmm.
then at its base level, simply look to yourself and ask what's the environment in which you would operate best? Well, when you're the
Yeah.
leader, the environment you operate best in is this freedom and autonomy, right?
Hmm.
And it is
Yeah.
the ability to, create, make decisions, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, look, Dermot, we can't give that to everyone. I'm not suggesting that. I'm simply saying that look where that's absent.
Mm.
Where is that absent? Like the idea that, through the discovery with my children and my wife and many other things, just this the basic thing of, so if we look at diversity, right, across the board, and then we look at neurodiversity, well, how would it make sense that the message delivery or the methodology or the implementation is the same for everyone? Well,
Yeah.
we need that in order to scale. Okay, well, is it a little more challenging to figure out how to scale in maybe a five parameter factor? But so, for example, I'll give you a quick example. I don't read emails. I don't read people's emails. Like if it's beyond 2 or 3 lines, I'm not reading it, and I've made that clear. So you can call me, you can text me, you can give me bullet points, you can send me a video, you can send me an audio, you can send me something else, and that I'll hear it and I'll get the message and I'll be able to move through it. I don't do well in that form factor. And so there are many people, if they're neurodivergent, whether it be dyslexia, dyscalculia, any of the spectrum of things, whether they're in the autism spectrum, or
Hmm.
oh my God, what gifted brains, what incredibly gifted people.
Yeah.
And if you don't get access to that,
Yeah.
forget about it. Like you're missing out on so much performance. And
Yeah.
what's required to get access to it is not a tremendous lift. It's just to
Mm-mm.
show up from a place of how do I discover what your skill set, talent, natural ability, and capability is, and then make a
Yeah.
determination as to whether or not that profile skill set solves a need for the business. And then if it does, I ought to do as much as I can to get out of the way, to
Yeah.
allow performance to occur, to create a framework in which performance can occur, to create
Mm.
clarity around what performance is, to provide the resources for that to occur, and then to create a meaningful relationship in such a way that that individual has a meaningful connection to what they do. So they can be the best mom that they can be and be the best employee that they can be.
Mm. Wow. I love that. Um, Gosh, I could go on to so many questions, but I know we're running out of time for this.
We
Just
can
in hearing you
Yeah, if
speak,
we can do I've got a couple of minutes. We can do 10 minutes if you want.
yeah. Okay. And listening to you speak, talking about the regular conversations, talking about understanding where they're at and where the organization is and the gap, you know, making autonomy and freedom as available to all as possible, um, based on the limitations of the job and the company. I mean, there are those. Those conversations, those adjustments, they're not easy. So leading by human-centered principles is not always the easiest path. Um, but we've already heard just in your performance information that you shared about the service department in India, it pays just in the retention alone, much less the profit
But when you
margins.
when you
But
say it's not easy, what
yeah,
does that mean? Why is it none
well,
of it
when
is
I,
easy? None of it is easy. Building businesses is not easy. Like none of it
yeah,
is easy. But what's so much more difficult about what you're describing? Like
yeah,
what in your
I
experience do people describe as being the difficulty of it?
well, my experience is, here's our checklist, here's our compliance, here's the way we do things, and that looks different. So that's what makes it difficult in many eyes. Um, I
Yeah,
don't see it as that myself personally, but that's why I'm leading the human score because I want that passion and that value and understanding that you have to be something that every leader has and then thus experiences. And right now, that number is less than 10% of companies are human centered. So I think we have quite a ways to grow. So for the 80, 90% that says, no, 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 that's too difficult, what would you say to them? What are the challenges you've encountered, and how do you stay grounded in human-centered practices? I guess in one sense, you don't have the way it's always been done to fall back on because you
right.
are a startup. But for those that do, how would you speak to that concern? And I think of, just to throw this out, I saw a short by NVIDIA's CEO who says he never meets with his people because They know what they have to do, and I find that unbelievable. But so, for those leaders that are like that, what would you
Yeah.
say?
So I don't know that he's not human centered. I
Mhm.
don't like I watch some of the components. I know that, he has something like, I don't know, 50 direct reports, or a fairly flat organization. And it could be that they know what they need to execute on within the business. And what I would say is, like, if we look at the scale and tier of how many organizations exist in the world, who are the top employers in the world, like, there's a wide range, right? Like, you're moving
Yeah,
from this to something like Walmart, and then you're moving to you know Nvidia, Meta, any of these other organizations, right? So I think
yeah,
the first thing is, there's no single answer, there's no broad answer. Um, and I can understand and respect that at scale, we're 200 plus employees. Uh, if I had 200,000 employees,
hmm,
how would this look and work? I don't know, is the honest
yeah,
answer, because I don't have to solve that problem today.
yeah,
Um, and I imagine that you can implement structure in a human-centric way.
yeah,
That part of the part of the objectivity around this infrastructure is that people would understand why there's a need for this. So
yeah,
right now, for example, we're in the process of rolling out a decision-making methodology, because how
hmm,
decisions were being made in the organization was challenging, and
hmm,
information flow and everything else. So there's a process by Bain Consulting, which is called RAPID, RAPID, and it
hmm,
stands for recommender, agree, RAP, perform, input, and decision. And so each of those are
hmm,
distinct roles, and you run through this decision-making paradigm that is cross-sectional. So it cuts across lots of different things in the organization, and we're learning, we're finding our feet, and we've had some success with it. And I think it's certainly something that we will lean into on an ongoing basis.
yeah,
So, to answer the question, I don't know that I have anything for a company with, I think Walmart has 2 million employees. Like, how are we, like, you got to have some structure, you got to have some framework
right, hmm,
within that. And I also think that what we're likely to see in the next, 10 years is companies the size of ours
hmm,
having outsized impact in terms of their financial contribution to the larger ecosystem. So, there's
yeah,
stories of single employee AI companies generating 100 million in revenue, right? So what I think is that the technology that we have and that will be more ubiquitous moving forward will allow outsized performance with less people, or
mm,
smaller groups of people. And
yeah,
from that place, it's quite easy to, in my opinion, have a more human-centric approach.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and just in your case alone, you could have the same 200 employees, but scale to the, billion
yes,
dollars marks and not change the way your organization is structured because of the human centricity.
agreed.
Yeah. I think that, at least what I'm seeing, there's a fallacy in the larger organizations that of what human centricity is. Like one of the dimensions, well, three of the dimensions, decision making, work design, and structure, those, the way the employees are experiencing those things are what is holding back performance. And quite
100%.
frankly, AI is showing us that, right? People that are implementing AI to currently those initiatives, I think the numbers are like 90% of them are failing because work design, decision making, and structure. And so, had employees been engaged with and listened to, the years and decades prior, I think those things would have been much more fluid and working properly for AI to be added on top of. But because they weren't, they're experiencing those problems, and I think that's a real issue.
Are there
Um,
are there any are there any larger companies in your ecosystem that you've discovered that do better than others? Like any publicly traded companies or any large companies that you would say are representative of where you would like it to be, or is it so devoid of signs of life once you reach a certain scale or a certain age?
Well, and I don't want to speak out of turn either. We're a startup, so the number of companies that we have engaged in is fairly small.
Right.
So have any of these big guys called me to say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" No. So I can't attest to whether um, they're leading in human-centered ways. Obviously, the public failures that happen, like with Klarna and Duolingo, those make it pretty obvious that uh, there were some issues before they put AI in, and had they taken care of those, they would have. I always use the analogy. It's like companies have every light blinking on the dashboard of their business, their car, but instead of trying to say, well, how can I put this dashboard light out and this dashboard light out? Let's just put faster fuel in, which is
Right.
AI, right?
Yeah.
And somehow that's supposed to keep me going down the road. Um, but as you navigate, speaking of AI, the future of Hotel Trader, how do you see yourself keeping humans at the center as you bring in AI in ways that helps you to do what you do better and faster?
Yeah, so we're in it right now. I was actually just I have a bi-weekly CEO hour, CEO corner where anyone from the company just calls in and I'm open for any questions and we just talk.
Mm,
Today, first kind of 30, 40 minutes was on global events and so I share my kind of perspective on it. Not my political perspective, but the idea of how do you how do you look to navigate when the world seems so overwhelming at times and
yeah.
how much of that is real and how much of that is influenced by the media and if you just
Mm,
stopped
yeah.
your news feed, I think you'd be all right today.
Yeah.
You'll get the main headlines because someone else will tell
Yeah.
you, but mentally it's not designed to help you. So
No, no, it's not
turn it off
healthy
and
at
you'll
all.
be all right, because we have employees in Dubai and I was texting or messaging with our employee yesterday and she's like, yeah, it's fine. Schools are open, everything is good. Like we're aware, we're a little on edge, but otherwise nothing. But if I look
Yeah.
at the news,
Yeah.
major hotel chains are being bombed and like it's a war zone in Dubai. And then I speak to our team on the ground. They're like, no, it's fine. Like we're going to kids are going to school, stores are open.
Yeah.
It's like, is it ideal? It's not ideal, but it's not a war zone. Um,
Yeah.
but if you look at the news feed and the media stream, like oh my God,
Yeah.
it's all day long. It's across the board. So I think that's not um, useful in,
Yeah.
in terms of the operation of it. And
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought there on the
No, that's
on the
okay. We're
topic.
talking about how do we keep an
Oh
organization
yes, the
human
AI.
centered
Yeah,
in AI enablement in the
yeah,
future that you want to build.
yeah. So we were in that today. So the second half, my head of data visualization asked, do you think that the machine will spin up all future data visualization, or will it be like still relying on people like me to a certain extent?
Mm,
He didn't exactly ask it that way, and so I said it'll be machines, but they'll have a pilot, and the pilot will be you, which means we'll have 10x, 20x outcomes and efficiency in what we're able to do. Because right
yeah.
now, it's a constraint. And I think even if I added five more of him, um, we're still dealing with that latency constraint, meaning that the user, so I'm a user and I'm in my
Hmm.
data and I'm looking to discover, and I've got a
Hmm.
question.
Yeah.
Now I have to form the question And then I have to discover what's possible in the question and the framing of how I might get the output for the answer. And so we have to move through, and then I have to define it for him. Then he takes a look at it, then he builds a dashboard. And I'm saying, well, right now we're at the stages already where I'm just speaking
Having yeah,
to the machine. Now, at a certain point in time, I might want that represented in a way that is semi-permanent, meaning that it shows up in someone's inbox once a week, or it takes an
hmm
action, or it drives an action, or it does something. Yeah, well, I would like him to be the pilot in creating the best possible outcome of what that is. So take his
sure.
existing skill set with the knowledge that he has around these technologies and systems, and then be a better prompter than I am. But
Yeah,
I'll be able to get to that place much faster where he can be the expert to take it to a different level much faster.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
where it is. I think we're going to need pilots and expertise, and everyone's talking about the agents and the agents. Yeah, but we're a little bit of ways from the refinement of the agent, and I think we're going to need some human oversight in that, and
yeah,
human connection to that, in a way that means that I might be able to keep my organization at 200 to 300 people and do 1 to 5 billion, versus what
yeah,
traditionally would be that organization might need to get to 500, and so
yeah, yeah.
that's where I
And
think.
one thing I've heard come up that the AI is creating the age of the generalist, and based on what you see, and even based on my own thinking, I think it's the opposite. I think it's the age of the expert because if AI can do everything, and say, for instance, in this employee's experience, his expertise is in data. If you put someone that knows nothing about data to be the pilot of that, they they won't know if they're getting the wrong
For sure.
outputs.
100%. I'm of the opinion it's both, like that there are
Yeah,
some foundational level functions
yeah,
that a machine is better suited for. The outcome is just more consistent, likely more accurate, and more efficient. And as users, we would have a better experience.
yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, I went to set up the other day for a property. I needed to set up gas, electric, internet, etc. And I could do most of it online, and then I could do auto bill pay uh, online.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, that's really useful. And I could see where the process that I went through with the right guardrails and everything else, that I could have a machine do that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to go log on and put in the address and provide proof of ownership or whatever the case may be. Like, we
Yeah.
could do all of that. And
Yeah.
there's already receivers ready to go there. Now, I didn't hire someone to do that. That's not, but yet I'd love those couple of hours back. And
Yeah.
if I could have someone do that, then great. Like, that would be really
Mhm.
useful.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that within the business context, it's happening all day long. I don't see that, like, there's no one in our business doing that today. It's just
Hmm.
being done by the individuals, whether it's an onboarding function, whether it's
Yeah.
an information flow function. They could just work better, and we would
Yeah.
be the more improved. And no one's doing it today. And that's why the output is not as efficient as it could be. So those
Yeah.
are what I would call the generalist functionalities, and I think that it's really useful. And I also think that um, our team could respond faster to questions and initiatives if they had an agent that they could just ask,
Yeah.
rather than go try to decipher it. So I'm on with a hotel and they're asking, "Hey, look, I'm seeing an increase in cancellations. What's the reason?" Wouldn't it be nice if my team were able to say, "I don't know, let me check," and they both asked the question to the data, and the data said
Hmm.
top 5 reasons? Wouldn't that be a more informed, engaged,
Yeah.
responsive conversation when we're all limited on time? And they would say, "Oh,
Yeah.
there's 3 reasons. What do you want to do?" "Oh, I think we should. Wow, they have an 80% cancellation rate. I think we should introduce a non-refundable rate there, and make the refundable rate higher so that we incentivize them to book non-refundable." Great. Like, you could be in action much sooner, much faster.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I think it's an accelerant. Um,
Hmm.
and I also think that if you're speaking to the market, they're always going to speak the market. It's always going to be this P&L financial efficiency rather than a broader definition of efficiency.
Hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. It was MIT that did research, and it was in the 80 percentile. I don't remember if it was 83 or 88, um, of productivity and efficiency. Both of them were in the 80s, are improved by empathy from their leaders.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that, and this study was done in 2023. So at least since 2023, leaders have known that, gosh, I can get 80 something percent more efficiency and more productivity just by empathizing with my employees. But instead of let's invest all we can in learning how to do that, we instead are going to invest millions into AI because we think that somehow the 14 to 20% efficiency that it's going to give us, improved productivity, is a better bet.
Right.
I am very conflicted when I hear that kind of information. Like, it seems like a no-brainer to me. Why do you think it isn't?
Well, because it's created as an either or, and I just don't think it's an either or. I think you can have both. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think like if you make it an either or, then they're pitted against each other. But why not have empathy and AI?
yeah.
You'd probably be better off.
I
But
want you to repeat because I think it's a universal question that I think opens the gateway to so much creativity in an organization and so much human centricity in an organization. And that's your question about, in light of our goals, is what is most useful, or is this
yeah,
useful?
yeah, it's just like if you look through the lens of why are we here having this conversation to begin with?
Yeah.
We're here because we're employees in the organization. We may have a reporting mechanism. You report to me in the organization. Great. But we're both here for this thing called performance in hotel trade. Great. Do we have that defined? Yeah, there's some metrics. They could be numbers, they could be outcomes, they could be measurements, they could be something. Great. So we have it defined. We know what performance is. We agree on that? Yeah, great. Okay. Do we have the right equipment, information, knowledge, resources to get there? Yeah, we think we do. We don't seem to be missing much. We've got the right head count. We know the goal. We know what performance looks like, and then we know how we need to execute. Great. Where is it not occurring? What's not? Well, we've got these headwinds. It's industry. It's an issue. It's internal. Okay. So why is that? Well, the no. Objectively, let's skip the part where I say we're not hitting the numbers. And rather than you say, yeah, I see that, we're not, that you say, well, look, you got to understand, like any conversation that starts with, well, look, you got to understand, we have to stop there. Like it's like, whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, whoop.
Somebody
Just
doesn't understand.
Well, no, it's because in their brain, they've already gone through the piece. I'm responsible for the numbers. When the numbers are not performing, he thinks I'm not performing. There's an automatic
Mhm.
connection, which now means I have to go through all the reasons to share with him how I'm performing. And look, I showed up last week, even though my child was. And we're in such a non-useful conversation. It
Yeah.
has absolutely no place in the conversation. It's not useful. It's not going to get us anywhere. Versus, yeah, performance is not happening. Great. Do we have any sense why? Yeah, I think there's three primary reasons, and you can share with me if you see any others. Great. Like the ability to create that in somebody else means we can move
Mm.
so faster toward performance because they don't have
Yeah.
the devil on their shoulder going, he thinks it's you. He thinks it's you. He thinks it's you. Well, if guess what? If he thinks it's you, he's going to address it with you. You'll know that if he thinks it's you, then we're going to talk about you. But the
Yeah.
idea of he thinks it's you is not a unilateral, like why why would it be you? Well, it might be you because you're unable to create performance in another individual on your team. It might be you because we're getting 50% of you. Like there could be any number of reasons,
Yeah.
but it doesn't
Yeah.
make it automatically, I got to get into a defense position now. No, no, we're
Yeah.
just in discovery objectively, and we might discover, oh, yeah, we have a lot of cancellations because of what's going on in the Middle East right now. Yeah, neither of us can do
Yeah.
anything about that.
No.
Or can we? Okay,
Yeah.
we know the reason why. Now let's be in action around
Yeah.
what we intend to do differently. Is there another corridor we can lean into? Can we get performance from somewhere else? Is there like we can now be unconstrained in assessment of what's possible.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
it's just
I
useful, not useful. And when we're in these defend spirals and the dog ate my homework and all of these other conversations,
yeah.
like I pause and I say, hey, can you like so some of the language I use is if we want to be successful in the conversation, you can't be in it.
Yeah.
So if we were here with Karen and Dermot, I would say, okay, look, Karen, you and we work for McKinsey and we're coming in from McKinsey in to assess this thing called Karen Head of Design. And so in order to do that, I need Karen McKinsey over here with me so that we can assess Karen Head of Design. And in order to
Hmm.
do that, you can't be in the conversation.
Yeah.
So anytime that Karen Design is like, no, but, if, but, then McKinsey Karen is not in the room and I need McKinsey Karen
Yeah.
because we can move through it much faster and we can assess it much quicker and we can get to a place where we would look as McKinsey and go, yeah, there's three things we would do. And then now we would talk with Design Karen and say, hey,
So
we
can we do
implement these
those?
things? Yeah.
Yeah. The obstacle is the way, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And my approach was always when talking about performance, this is the performance we want to achieve. This is where we are, what's working, what's not working, what's missing. And that really um, is it not the individual being the problem, right?
Right.
It's something outside of them. Um, so I've loved this conversation. And final question:
Yeah.
if you could share one message with leaders around the world about building a human-centered organization, what would it be?
Um, you likely have a sense of what you or how you have not enjoyed leadership in your career.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and from that place, there's a wide range. And so, if you've been raised, let's say, just in the Wall Street environment, and here's how it's done, and here's the committed and connected and committed piece. Um, you have a pattern of kind of learned behavior.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you know, the discovery might be that they think it works, that their desired outcome is optimal financial performance at all costs. So I'm not suggesting that's what it is. I'm just suggesting that let's say we land there with an individual.
Hmm.
Then what message can I give them? They're
Mm.
successful.
Yeah.
They're successful in the objective.
Yeah. If that's their
Because,
sole objection, right?
but that's what I'm saying. Like if it is,
Yeah.
I'm not here to convince them otherwise.
Hmm.
To me, leadership again create a future that otherwise would not exist while fulfilling on or attempting to fulfill on the best interests of all stakeholders. That's
Yeah.
what it is for me, and that's how I lead.
Yeah.
And I'm open to the idea that there are leaders that that's not their definition of leadership or their definition of success. And
Mm.
I'm also pretty confident I'm not going to change their perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and I would say that from a selfish place, from a self-serving place, that so long as they exist, then I'll never have a shortage of people.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. With gratitude, I appreciate the
Okay.
way you lead because
Absolutely. Please,
you're
please continue
turning,
to do it. And
you're turning
eventually
out.
my desire would be that, the pendulum shifts and the majority of people find the living of their lives and the work that they do fulfilling in a meaningful way. And
Yeah.
the best way I can contribute to that is to create the future leaders in a way that their experience of leadership is how they fulfill on it moving forward as they go build their own businesses or
Yeah. I
contribute in
love
other
that.
companies.
Well, thank you, Dermot. Thank you for your leadership and for your example, your commitment to building workplaces where people matter. And thank you for being a part of the global human centered organization movement. Really do
My
appreciate
pleasure.
you and Hotel Trader and all the employees there and the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you for having me. And as I said, it's an honor to be included.
Yes.
Take care.